The European Council President stressed the consequences of Brexit will be negative before insisting for respecting our partners. We expect the same in turn. He continued on from his strong words after the Salzburg summit, in which he killed off key economic pillars of Theresa May's Chequers proposal. It is understood European capitals were hoping for a reset to Brexit talks after what Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte described as an accident in Austria left negotiations on a sticky wicket. Mr. Tusk, who led an anti-Soviet resistance of shipyard workers in Gdansk, Poland, continued Brussels' ill feeling toward Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt's Conservative Party conference speech last Sunday. Comparing the European Union to the Soviet Union is as unwise as it is insulting Donald Tusk. He also avoided extending an olive branch to Britain in the form of a Brexit compromise, except insisting the EU is ready to offer a Canada plus free trade agreement. The former Polish Prime Minister joined critics of the address, which compared the EU to a Soviet-styled prison not allowing Britain to leave. After speaking of his time growing up in the Soviet bloc, Mr. Tusk said, "In respecting our partners, we expect the same in return." Comparing the European Union to the Soviet Union is as unwise as it is insulting. The Soviet Union was about prisons and gulags, borders and walls, violence against citizens and neighbors. Brexit news. Donald Tusk demands respect from Britain after Jeremy Hunt's speech. Image, Getty. The European Union is about freedom and human rights, prosperity and peace, life without fear. It is about democracy and pluralism, a continent without internal borders or walls. As the President of the European Council and someone who spent half of my life in the Soviet bloc, I know what I'm talking about. Mr. Hunt caused a great deal of angst in Brussels after his Birmingham address to Tory party activists, despite attempts to row back on his rhetoric. The Foreign Secretary said, "What happened to the confidence and ideals of the European dream? The EU was set up to protect freedom. It was the Soviet Union that stopped people leaving." Donald Tusk said, comparing the European Union to the Soviet Union is as unwise as it is insulting. Image, EPA. Having met with Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar in Brussels, Mr. Tusk spoke of the importance of the EU remaining united behind Ireland throughout the Brexit process. While Britain weren't expecting a dramatic shift in policy, negotiators were hopeful the backstop impasse may have been eased after their discussions. Mr. Tusk continued the Brussels push to dramatize negotiations, asking British politicians to avoid any emotional arguments. He said they may sound attractive, but they do not facilitate agreement. Let us remember that every actor in this process has their dignity, and confrontation in this field will not lead to anything good. The European Council President envisaged the future relationship as a Canada plus arrangement, which could be much further reaching on trade, internal security and on foreign cooperation. He added, "This is a true measure of respect, and this offer remains in place. The EU is serious about getting the best possible deal, even though we haven't changed our minds that the consequences of Brexit will be negative for both sides." The EU's chief negotiator Michel Barnier has previously spoke of the possibility of such a deal being pursued, but critics in the UK believe it doesn't fully address the Irish border. Ahead of a British move to offer a compromise on the backstop, there was anticipation of creating a new soft landing zone for Mrs. May's fresh proposals. However, Mr. Varadkar remained largely silent throughout the brief press statement in Brussels, only moving to echo the sentiments of Mr. Tusk. The Irish leader urged Dublin, Brussels and Westminster to get down to business over the next few weeks, in the hope of striking a deal. He added, "I want to see an agreement by November if at all possible." Brussels is now hoping the end of the Conservative Party conference will bring a fresh attitude to talks as both sides strive to complete a deal on the Irish border as early as the upcoming October summit and the rest of the withdrawal deal by November.